the people would like to see, more programs and more government involvement, higher taxes for people. I think that makes sense. But internationally, those things are against us growing internationally.
Yeah.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I am your host, Rob Schultz, and today we have founder, CEO of Sellmark, James Sellers. James, welcome.
It's great to be back, Rob, and it's always fun to have a conversation with you, so I can't wait to dig into the topics of the day once again.
Oh man, so I was going to pretend like we hadn't done this before because you were number 3. Okay. You were number 3, and now I think we're up to, I don't know what this is, 65 or something like
You've
this.
You've had some really great conversations. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I haven't listened to that one in a while, so maybe
I haven't either.
It could be gold.
It could be really good, but it was early on for sure. And first of all, we've known each other for a long time. So much appreciate that you came on so early when we were trying to get this podcast going, and especially gracious to you that you decided to come back for more.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Again, we need to listen to that. But I just remember having a great conversation. And as always, when we get together, I learn a lot and reflect on things I haven't had the opportunity to think about in a while. And I find it really rewarding. And really, hopefully, people that are watching today can relate to things we're talking about. And hopefully, the reflection is valuable to them as well. So I think it's great.
So I'm really excited because this show is all about founder owners, closely held business owners. That can be quite the journey, and you've been extremely successful at it in some areas that I think really challenge a lot of people. Founder owners, a lot of times they'll come see us and be ready to transition out when they've kind of hit a ceiling. And I even heard it yesterday from one of my clients. He's like, I don't think that I enjoy where I am today compared to where I was before. When I start hearing that, what I'm hearing is somebody saying that they've basically created for themselves something that they feel very uncomfortable in. And you've been able to push through that a number of times because you started out, I would assume, at zero revenue, no employees, right?
That's right. Just actually, the two of us that founded the company. The one founder was a creative genius. He's one of the best designers I've ever met. Originally, we started out in a different field. We're going to be a marketing company. And
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we both put $500 in.
Okay.
And we burned through $250 of $500, so we're down to $250 each for our investment, with some brochures and expenses and things.
Yeah.
And the founder's wife, which is something I think is important to talk about, the founder's wife is just as important as the founder's dynamic. What I see the biggest determination if a founder or an entrepreneur will get the business off the ground is if there's risk tolerance of the spouse. Or if they're single, that makes it a little more simple. A lot of times the family dynamic isn't willing to do the sacrifices of work and time and risk that's necessary, especially in those early stages when resources are so limited. But long story short, we ran into some resistance. We had some issues with the market. In that time in Dallas, marketing companies are going bankrupt left and right.
So when was that?
This was like 2001, 2002.
Okay.
So I think 9/11 was 2001. Telecom.com collapse literally started at the end of 2020 or 2000 and 2001. You had all these companies going bankrupt. There's marketers all over the place, scrambling for work. Freelancers were everywhere. Everyone's looking for work. So it was a tough environment to start a marketing firm, even with a great vision, a good idea. Long story short, his wife was like, let's get out of here. Let's get out. So he came back and asked if he could get his $250 back from his side of the investment. When he did that, though, kind of as a reflection point for me, is like, okay, I need to go where the market is, not to what we originally set out. That market doesn't exist anymore. We're going to serve telecom.com as what we were supposed to be focusing on.
Oh yeah, it's
So that's
very
when,
different from what you do today, which we
yeah,
hadn't mentioned. That Sellmark is basically in the kind of outdoor sports arena,
yeah,
um, optics,
high
lights,
tech
tactical type.
manufacturing
Yeah,
of very technically advanced products, and we do it all around the world and in a dozen different ways and a lot of different brands. So that marketing basis and strategy has been strong with the company since that. But basically, at the reflection point when he exited, I was like, okay, I'm going to take my life savings and start buying product and selling it myself. I didn't want to wait to get a client to convince them I can help them market it and come up with a sales solution for it. I decided I'm just going to find a product and start selling it. And that's kind of how the company started building up the capital, it started snowballing once we were able to start turning that capital over. If that makes sense.
makes a lot of sense. So when you decided to find a product, and this was in 2001 or two, somewhere in there,
In there,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you decided to find a product. You were kind of agnostic about what that product would be. I would assume you were looking
Right.
for something that you felt like you could buy at a price and sell at a higher price and that had a market.
Right. And at that point, though, you still have to sell what you know. And I did some research, met with people selling outdoor products and finding out what they would buy and what price they'd buy at. So we did that research before we started buying things. We kind of knew a little bit where the market was headed. So early days, we did make some mistakes. I probably should have went out of business a few times, and we just ended up rolling our sleeves and sold our way out. To this day, the company's got a kind of mantra. When times get tough, you start selling.
Yeah. That's so funny because that's how I operate too. When the market goes down, I look at Austin. I'm going, dude, we're in this. We have got to just work your way out. I mean, it's
definitely.
just exactly how you do it.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that so many entrepreneurs, when things get hard, they tap out. But if you look at the guys that have been in the industry for a while, if they tapped out earlier when things got hard, they wouldn't have their businesses. But I do think it's different when you're looking back and you deal with the difficulties of running a business that's more complex and it's got a lot of people involved in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's a lot different than when you're 20.
Yeah, it does change.
I think it does change things. And then, what you want out of life changes. So when you open, you talked about a lot of people don't want to deal with the headaches anymore and they're looking for alternatives. I get that.
Yeah.
So I understand why a lot of people do that.
Yeah, I think that a business has a life cycle. I think a business owner has a life cycle. And what intrigues me about your story is, and so somewhere around 2001, $250, $500 investment, no employees. How many employees do you have now?
I think worldwide we're 150 plus.
Yeah, so we're at 150 employees, revenue in the
say over 100 million.
Yeah, in the 100 million range.
Yeah.
Okay, those are two very, very different scenarios.
It's true.
And yet still the same CEO. Okay, still you're the same person that you were 24 years ago.
I don't know if I'd say,
but you've changed how you do business and kind of you're the same person, but you're a different person. I'm interested to know, where did you have to make changes in who you were, how you dealt with risk, how you dealt with employees and all that? Because it's amazing that the same person, if you think about it, can be at that founder level and find a product and go out and sell, and yet many years later make all these crucial decisions, these financial decisions that have to be made, manage employees, find leadership, and do all these different roles that you have today. That's kind of amazing.
And I appreciate that. I do think that most companies follow a very different path than our company.
Okay.
Obviously, we started in a different space and pivoted. That's not unusual. We started in a garage with very little capital, and then we tried different things until something worked. And then when it stopped working, we pivoted. That's not that unusual. There's a lot of great companies that have gone through that. What I think is different is my background. Basically, I was educated to be a CEO of a medium to Fortune 500 company. So that's what I have an MBA. I had a desire to manage a large set of resources and people to put into great purpose to create something. So my background was always scale. So probably what wasn't normal for me is dealing with no resources, no people.
I got
That was
you.
a harder part.
That was
So
the harder part for you.
so I think a lot of entrepreneurs that focused on like a passion, like again, I do have a passion for outdoors, I like outdoor products, but I am product agnostic in the sense that I was looking to find the need in the market to fill, not come up with something I'm passionate about and try to find a way to get to market. A lot of technical companies in our space, they have a founder who came up with a new invention. The invention launched the company. The problem with that is a different skill set than running a big company. So most of the people I know that started small with an idea, a product idea, they, the business side of it was always secondary to the passion for the product. And I think where my passion is in the business. It's about understanding the market, understanding the customer, and getting whatever the best solution the market is in the best way it is. So to me, it doesn't matter if I invented it, if I licensed it, bought the patent, or even if it's not patentable, but if there's a need in the market to find a way to get there, and it's a good product and it satisfies that customer and it allows us to reinvest and scale and grow, do more things. That's what's interesting to me. The other thing that's a little different about our company is I never operated the company and maximize the amount of cash flow out of the company. That's not been my purpose. My purpose was to put the money back in the company where it always was getting a better return than any other option I had, which we talked a little bit about that. That's still kind of the way we're operating, and we want to grow internationally. And we want to, how do you compete with the biggest companies in the world? Eventually, you have to become one of the biggest companies in the world. I may not live long enough to see that, but my mindset as the CEO of the company, I work for the company. It isn't I don't see the entrepreneur role isn't what I live in every day. I try to be the best CEO leader as possible. And my objective is to grow this to a global, successful manufacturing company, whatever type of company it is, always constantly evolving with the market, always looking for the next opportunity to serve that market better. So I kind of have the expectation as a CEO running a company is that I have to develop a team of people that are smarter, more capable, and ever expanding to take on that role. And I don't have the expectation of being able to do that forever. Like at some point, I need to be thinking about the leadership that's going to take over the company to the next level when I'm no longer able to. So
Very,
that's a little different.
very important. Well, and so that kind of answers the question as far as the life cycles, right? So, there's a life cycle of a business, which if you're growing a business like you are with the vision that you are, that life cycle is very long. It extends past our life cycles.
Yes.
So therefore, as a life cycle of a business, of a founder, owner, CEO, it becomes very, very crucial that you start developing that leadership that's going to be able to then go on and take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very hard to do.
And I think it's really, a corporation is a separate entity,
right,
than the ownership. And so that's the way our system's set up. I take that very seriously. And I think another mistake that people have is that if you are running a business as a family or an individual and you look at the capital the company is accumulating and you're possessive of that, it changes your thinking. But if you are a CEO hired to run a company and look at those assets, always focusing on the best utilization of those assets, the fact that assets exist, they're worth something doesn't bother you. That's not a thing. Your job is to do something with it. But if you own that and you're too possessive of it, it changes your psychology where you become focused on preserving and protecting what you have and you become risk averse. But the problem is you don't grow a business is not taking risks and investing for the future.
No
So I
question.
also think that if you're a founder operator who is possessive of the capital and not focused on how to best utilize that capital, then I think that you're not in position to reinvest, take risks, and grow that business. And I think it's important to separate yourself from that. I think there's a certain amount of detachment from the business is really important. If it's too much of an extension to yourself, you're not going to sleep well. You're going to be stressed out all the time. You won't be able to make decisions for the good of the business because you're always worried about the potential loss.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why people hire us to manage, their assets for them, their personal assets, is because we're able, just like you see yourself in your role as a CEO of a company that you happen to own. However, you try to detach yourself from that hard to do. People have a hard time detaching themselves from and not being possessive of their own personal assets as well, and can make very poor decisions, just like a CEO owner can.
Sure.
Based upon being risk averse or just the emotional part of it is what you have to insulate yourself from.
Right. I think what I thought was really refreshing when you and Austin came, every year we sit down and talk about what our plans are.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because my perspective of my personal assets and my family and try to be a good provider for them is very different than the way I look at the business assets.
Well, it should be.
So, yeah.
It should be.
And you guys always ask like what my objectives are. And I think, there is definitely, as a head of a household, you want to make sure you provide for your family 1st and foremost. And there's not a lot of interest that I have to always be, again, it's kind of like gambling at some point in investments. If you don't work with the right team, has the right strategy that's committed and focusing on that thing that's investing. And you and Austin have always brought really good options and being able to articulate ways to balance investments, to hedge the risk, meet financial objectives in a way that, again, I think the fallacy of owners or anybody is that you've been successful in a particular business.
Yeah.
And that you can be successful in other business.
You can translate.
The problem is 20, 30 years of experience, expertise, and a day-to-day focus on that business is why it's successful. It's not because I was making decisions just out of the blue. And I think a lot of people think because they're successful in business that, I think especially, again, people that came with a specialty degree, like a PhD or master's or engineering or, a medical doctor or whatever, they're really an expert in something and then make great decisions in that. But it's really easy to think that your decision making is the reason why you have great results. But you apply that to financial decision making, it's a different skill set. Yeah. So
it doesn't work at all.
That's why I love coming to you and say, here, this is what I'm trying to achieve. You're in the space every day. You're an expert in it. And again, it's important to check the ego. I can't make those decisions. I don't have the time to do the work that you do. And I don't have the experience, education that you do to do it. So for me, that is another major tool in the tool bag of my whole expansive portfolio. And you guys are doing great. So without that, again, sleep is, I said this already about you get outside your comfort zone you can't make the risk, start worrying about losing stuff, you lose sleep. The same thing personally. If you got somebody out taking care of a part of the business, making prudent investments and giving you good advice, it helps you sleep. And that's a very good thing.
Yeah, you want to be able to sleep, and you want to be able to have the opportunity within your business to do what you need to do to grow, which means that you're taking risk. And and absolutely, I think that a lot of business owners, when they start to work with us here, they've gotten to the point where they've got something that's worth holding on to from a personal standpoint. And I see what you mean. I think that's a great point, that if you start trying to make those decisions that you should be making from a personal standpoint within your business, you could potentially be sinking your business, because you're not going to be able to continue to take advantage of the opportunities out there. Speaking of which, getting into the outdoor sports industry like in the early 2000s was brilliant. Because I sit here, that I'm into shotgun sports, so not the really expensive stuff. So I have friends and stuff that have, scopes, night visions, these kind of things that y'all make that are worth so much money. It just is mind boggling. And that's what you sell. And there was no way that really didn't exist 25 years ago to the same level it does today.
That's a case study in itself.
Absolutely.
Because I made the decision to try to bring in something the market didn't have. So originally I went to Eastern Europe. In the 90s, you had the fall of the collapse of the Soviet Union, reunification of Germany, and you had all this infrastructure that was left over by the Soviet Union and their satellites, massive manufacturing, all these engineers and all this stuff that they could do, but they were given a lot of opportunities to do stuff with it. So at that time, we went over there and we were able to produce a whole lot of things. We didn't actually start looking at optics, but we were over there looking at, it's going to sound silly, but fur hats, striped shirts, and like boots and ammo belts and all this kind of stuff. And we found that the military industrial complex of the Soviet Union was making a lot of military production. One of the things they were doing is making night vision. And what's interesting about the Soviet Union is that they really never stopped producing something. So like night vision technology was advancing. They created a factory and made night vision. And then they wanted new night vision. They created a new factory, made new night vision. They kept making the old stuff. So when we were over there, we found all this really interesting technology that there was no consideration for the consumer for the design and functionality of it, but the technology was there. So and it was still in production. In the early '90s, the floodgates kind of opened for everything from Eastern Europe was coming over, but it was clunky, not well designed, and that kind of ended. And when we entered the market in 2002, everybody that's been in the space for those years, like you missed the Wild West. It was amazing. It used to be a pretty good container in, sell it, make all this money. Those days are over. You missed out. The market's changed. It's dead. It's never coming back. And we're like,
Really?
I don't think that's really the case. But
Yeah.
what if we came in and designed something that looked good, was functioned well? You create a good brand, and you add new features. The consumers want. And that's really what we did. And that was at that time very disruptive. And we ended up growing the optics so quickly that we made the determination that the clothing and the accessory stuff really wasn't where we're at. So again, we pivoted and said we're not going to focus on that, not a value add, but we can do something in the night vision space. And now night vision's become not a fringe kind of thing.
Oh,
but
no.
it's required kit. But that market's changing so fast too. Now it's fun to be involved in the technology and the manufacturing and doing that on a global scale has been a lot of fun. We're actually just launching a new brand called Dark 30 officially. If this airs this week, you might
It doesn't. It does.
first to know.
Yeah, it'll air in a month.
In a month. Okay. So around that time, this brand will be launched nationally, and it's called Dark 30. And now we're taking night vision that used for handheld and things. Now we're going to be putting this on your UTV and vehicles, boats, and maybe drones at some point. So the evolution of it is going into the new areas.
Yeah, and
it never stops changing.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me just how night vision has changed and evolved over the years. When I was in the Navy, I was actually in charge of our night vision apparatus. Yeah, because I was communications and signal officer, and so we had the big eyes, is what we called them, which is giant binoculars that you could see a long ways, and then we had these night vision devices that were in these huge, containers that were worth. I think that they were like $250,000 a piece, something insane. Yeah. I mean, they were so expensive.
Huge lenses,
huge lens.
The green image, and it would whine and make noise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We'd mount that on the ship and go, wow, cool, you can see, and now anybody can do that.
So that $250,000, we have something that's probably at least 100 times more effective.
Right.
That you mount on your rifle. For a few $1,000s. So you say it's expensive, but it's actually
it's so much
the best deal going.
I think it was. I think these were worth enough money that was like, oh dang, as the guy who's kind of in charge of them, I was like, if these things like disappear, I'm probably going to Leavenworth. I was like, let's make sure that this that we don't lose these things.
I don't know if you know this, but I think the model you're talking about at that time it had radioactive properties in the lenses.
Oh, everything on that ship did.
So I hope you're okay.
Probably not. Probably not. No, every time would go up on the signal bridge, there was so much radiation that, we used to use like the old disc, right, for computers.
Oh.
No, just a disc that you put in a computer. I remember a few times I'd have one that had message traffic in my shirt, I'd go down and put it into a computer and it would be erased.
Because of all the
radiation. But anyway, we digress. But what you just described, I mean, somebody that has a really nice hunting rifle that probably costs, maybe $2,000 or something, and the night vision device they're buying from you costs twice that at least.
But isn't it amazing that somebody that's hunting hog, protecting their property from this hog problem or coyotes or whatever it is operating with equipment that 20 years ago would have been worth probably $500,000.
Well, it was classified.
Would have been state. I mean, now we're doing this. We're producing that for the general public.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. How
So you
that's
really
changed.
caught into something pretty exciting then.
It was a lot of fun. It's
Yeah.
been interesting to see that evolve. And now that's just one part of our business. And, we have a lot of brands and products in their spaces. So
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
interesting.
That's exciting.
But I'll say this too, and talk about the successes along the way. There's probably half a dozen brands that no longer exist. We tried things and it didn't resonate, didn't work, and we pivoted. So
Yeah. That's so important.
yeah,
I'm interested to know. So, like early on in your entrepreneurial journey, you're going over to the old Eastern Bloc, and I know you have been doing manufacturing in Asia as well, and so forth. And you seem just incredibly comfortable within this kind of global level of production and also marketing and so forth. Uh, that's so intriguing to me, and I know it's probably intriguing to a lot of the folks that are listening. How did you get comfortable with just going over to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and everything, and going and
yeah,
finding these opportunities?
it's a good question. I think again it speaks to the way you're raised, so
Okay,
and some of your education. I always have been a student of history, and I studied history of political science and economics in school. I've always been fascinated with people and cultures, something that's always been drawn to. Um, the truth is, there's a subset of people around the world that are go-getters. They're doing something. They're intelligent. They're curious. They're good people. They're moral. My point is that as the same segment in one country, you have more in common with those people in another country than you do with the people in your own backyard who aren't going anywhere. You know what I mean? So if
Hmm.
you can connect on a level with people that are doing something globally that you really can't, people in your own neighborhood. I mean, yes, there's a connection with people in our own town, and not saying anything against that. But as far as what made people tick and their drive and their interests and things, I found I had more in common with somebody that was interested in economics and history and business and manufacturing and technology, regardless of what nationality they were. But I'll say that the international business isn't for international is not for everybody. Most American businesses typically focus on the U.S. market
yeah,
almost exclusively, unless you're a Fortune 500 company. And I think it's to our detriment. I think Americans should be more globally focused. Our products and brands should be better represented internationally. And as a personal kind of side note, I'd like to see America's manufacturing strength come back so that our products can be sold competitively internationally. Because I think it's a mistake to lose control of our manufacturing and consumer products. And I'm very passionate in advocating for policies and business practices to make America more independent and stronger in our manufacturing. So definitely America first. I don't want to say that because now it's politically loaded, but I definitely think that I'm an American company. I want to see America strong. We have companies in other countries. We serve our customers globally, but internationally, business is becoming much, much, much more difficult. Um, I think a lot of American businesses were not well positioned to compete globally. Our costs, our regulation, our taxation, and that's the thing that people talk about. The people would like to see more programs and more government involvement, higher taxes for people. I think that makes sense, but internationally, those things are against us growing internationally.
yeah. I understand.
So some
Yeah,
of the things, like again, domestically, people are. It's interesting. We're in a political cycle. People have opinions what international business looks like and way things are globally, but most people have no experience of doing business internationally. They don't understand how difficult the competitive landscape is for American companies. So it's just interesting. So again, what kind of drew me to international business is because I think there's an untapped potential for that. But geopolitically, I think we're heading into more of a protectionist, isolationist
it does
kind of
look that
thing.
way. Yeah,
Yeah, and
it does look like a way.
if some of the things that people are advocating for, because they think it feels good, could actually further damage and destroy our manufacturing capability, further our global competitiveness, and ultimately reduce the revenues that try to increase.
Yeah.
So, for us, I think that it's a precarious time in the U.S., and we have a great opportunity ahead of us, but it's not going to be painless. It's going to be painful.
Hmm.
So, anyway, so kind of a side note, since Titan International is very much part of geopolitical economic world, and we're seeing some
Yeah,
definite
and
headwinds there.
you're definitely exposed both to the opportunities and the risks. But I really like that how you said it's you seek out commonality, with people in other or around the world. That's just
Yeah.
a great lesson all the way around. To not think about really the differences between us and somebody in
Yeah.
another country, but to find that common ground, and then seek opportunity
Yeah.
within that, whether it's manufacturing or sales, because you do manufacturing overseas, correct?
We do.
And you also
We sell overseas.
sell
Yeah.
overseas.
And again, we're agnostic in the sense that I want to look at the best way to deliver the best product possible to the audience, whether it's domestic or international. I'd prefer to make things in the United States. I'd prefer that was our go-to market because I want to see this country get stronger and better. But if it's not competitive and there's no market there, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So international still is, has advantages in our own domestic market.
Is most of your manufacturing overseas then?
Yeah, most by dollars, I guess, of total business, we probably do more in Europe, significantly more in Europe than anywhere else, followed by Asia, and then North America would be the smallest. But the North American portion, I think, has the biggest opportunity for growth
Okay.
because we're developing like patentable technologies that I think that would be very well perceived, or is already being perceived well, but we can scale in like our law enforcement security markets
Yeah.
and hopefully some federal contracts. That would be amazing.
That would be great.
Yeah. So
How did the war in Ukraine affect things for y'all?
that's a terrible question to ask me because I still have nightmares about that. So
That makes it a good question.
It is a
by the
good
way.
question, but the first invasion of Ukraine, or the first disruption in Ukraine
when they took over Crimea, I guess.
Yeah. That first salvo and that whole conflict really disrupted a lot of supply chains and markets and stuff. Again, we started doing stuff in Eastern Europe. So once that war happened, our old relationships and partnerships fell apart. We were no longer able to sell to countries completely, or there was additional again, every time this stuff happens in the news, what happens in the background is that tariffs get raised. You end up having embargoes put in place. You end up having, decades long relationships severed completely where you can't do business with each other.
Wow.
Just the business climate. I will say this though, before the invasion of Ukraine, and the business climate with doing business in Russia, for example, has been going south steady since at least the Obama administration, maybe before.
Okay.
Initially when Putin came to power, there was a hope that he, again at that point, it's a democratic country. They were going through reforms. They're privatizing a lot of stuff. Now, granted, it ended up becoming a massive corrupt transfer of assets
Sure.
to the oligarchs or basically the mafia over there. That continued to create a statist kind of situation where the economy was less and less free. That also affected the ability to do business there. Tariffs were put in place, just difficulties in general working with that part of the world. So when the initial Crimea thing broke out, that was pretty much the ending of that. And the unwinding of it was the final invasion.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
we were again, we had partnerships everywhere. We had partnerships with companies in Ukraine that were doing electronics and software development for one of our main products. And when that war first opened up, I mean, this last time around, we had people that were software engineers, and they were called up for conscription.
Oh wow.
And their families end up being. What's great about the partners, again, there's so many wonderful, amazing people. Companies that we work with work tirelessly until every one of those families, the children and the wives and stuff, were taken out of the country, and they would be put up in people's homes, and they'd be provided for. And to this day, there's still some living abroad. So anyway, that's kind of people we work with internationally. It's great to see that ground effort. But then there's people that I haven't talked to or seen in years in Russia that are great people. They would love to see a free, democratic Russia with capitalism and business opportunities, and they're stuck now in a country that's not that. So it's hard.
China.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? I mean, so hate to start keeping bringing up international is great and awesome, but man, some of it
The
is so
headwinds now
scary
are
right
really
now.
hard. Yeah,
It's tough.
The thing with China, and again, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur in the United States and you would start making a consumer product, to get that done in the United States is nearly impossible, and it has been since I've been alive, probably. So, um, if you wanted to make this transmitter receiver device, and I want to make 100 of these
H4n,
things, I don't even know how many of these are produced a year, but say that you want to start out and you need to make 100 of these, you couldn't find a manufacturer in the United States that would contract manufacture that for you for 100 pieces. The cost would be $100,000 per. Right?
Yeah.
So, but you could call China and you can get somebody that can make that configuration for you, make 100 pieces, and you'd have a competitive price. You have them on the market fairly quickly. You have to have that. Without that, entrepreneurs have no place to go to get their product started on the market. So, China was that workshop that a lot of small business, new business, and products came out of. With the current administration in China, they seem more focused on the power of the state. They don't seem to be wanting to be a partner with the U.S. in trade. And now you have this back and forth escalation, of kind of trade barriers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, fundamentally having a totalitarian communist party state, and it's going to get me a little bit of trouble if this is seen overseas, but it's different than dealing with a democratic capitalistic society because they get to pick and choose the winners of their economy. In capitalism, we're supposed to have free markets where the consumer picks the best choice.
Right.
It's never been a good relationship from American products entering fairly in China. In the last couple of decades, China has been hell-bent on the big growing industries, which is not really where we're at. But look at like telecom and electronics and all the internet technologies and all that stuff. So they would create a barrier to entry. Then they would have a party-sponsored, government-sponsored business that does the exact same thing. And then they spin it up, and then they'll open up the market so they can export their TikTok or Alibaba or whatever it is. So it's a different. It's not a fair playing field. We do need our government and China to open up. We need our government to be strong, and they need to fix some of these things.
What about some of the other areas in the world where you maybe see opportunity, like I don't know, like Mexico or India, places like that?
Yeah, before COVID, I wanted to go to India and Pakistan to see what their business climate's like. I've actually never been to either.
Okay.
I do know that a lot of production from China is leaving China. They're going to like Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia and India and Pakistan are also recipients of that. I can't speak to exactly what India and Pakistan have, but if you look purely from a labor standpoint for scalability, where if you needed to manufacture something on a big scale, they definitely have the access labor.
Yeah.
In our town here, Mansfield, the hardest thing is to get unskilled labor in mass.
Yeah, to be able to do something that makes the manufacturing tough here. But
that's where we do more manufacturing technology, advanced stuff here.
Okay.
But
like the high level stuff.
Usually high level are things specifically for U.S. market, where you're not going to make it and then send it to China or make it and send it to Vietnam, whatever. These are the markets. It's going to be made in the U.S. for U.S.
Yeah, I gotcha.
That's still an important, growing market for us. And having that technology component adds to the value add that we can do in the U.S. And we want to do more of that too.
Yeah. Okay. So you just continue to pivot and shift. And when I bring up some of these things, these are just some of the huge challenges that come up when you go internationally. But this again, it comes with the opportunity, comes with the territory.
And one of the challenges I think with international business is it is about relationships, but it's also about having well trained and you have to have process and procedures. You have to have your business practices like buttoned up. There's no room in a lot of our type of products to not get it done 100% right. This is like from import, export, and like accounting and finance. All that has to be done the right way. And you have to work with the right countries. Like there's countries that, you can't sell certain products to. There's some countries you can't even go to as Americans. So you'd really want to have that done. So here's the challenge is so we have these companies on global, and we're now competing with global companies, a lot of them public. They have all these legal departments and all this resources and stuff. As a small company, I'm going to have to hire somebody to go do something I myself have never done in a market that I have no awareness of and hope that they do it the right way.
That's tough.
That's really hard.
That's really tough. Expensive.
I've seen just firsthand going internationally, especially with the state-owned entities, their business practices aren't what I would want my employees to be involved in. So we've pretty much stayed away from those type of relationships. We'd rather deal with small independent entrepreneur owned companies for the most part, because I'm not going to name the country on this podcast per se, but these even countries, the government officials are expecting to be taken care of if you
Oh,
do
I'm
business in
sure.
that country,
Yeah.
and we don't do that.
You can't.
But again, if you hire somebody, you better make sure that they have the values and the training to do business the right way.
Yeah.
But so often you send good people to foreign lands, and those cultures and practices end up wearing off on them. So it's complicated. You have to be very cognizant of that. We did an effort in a country many, many years ago. Actually, it was China. We went to set up an office there, and that office ended up not working out for us. We had to shut it down. So it's a tough world.
A lot of challenges for sure. Well, James, where do you see yourself going from here? I mean, you kind of indicated you've got a new product launch. You have some exciting things within the domestic markets. It sounds like maybe even some of these challenges, in other parts of the world, have allowed you to focus on some opportunities here. Is that kind of one of the big pivots right now?
I would like to see us get more scale into international. So I would like to develop the team. I think really what I'm at, to answer your question at a macro level, is really training, developing the team, getting, continue to develop leadership in new areas that are necessary to receive or be able to do some of those opportunities.
Okay.
And then also start thinking about those key parts of the business that I'm involved in. I do need to start thinking about who's going to take on those responsibilities, and how do I train and develop those people. So that's a big part of it. Again, what's a little different with us is I didn't organize the business with the intent to sell it. We just had an announcement in our industry. One of our big competitors in town just sold an investment company, and I'm sure they'll do great. But that was their second transaction, I think, or maybe in third, where they've gone through to a couple different ownerships. I think when you're talking to entrepreneurs and they're facing with this situation where the entrepreneur has to realize they have not a long runway to figure out the transition. I think it's very profound. It may be easy to sell out and go down the road and let somebody just pick up the pieces and run with it. But what drives me, the number one thing that's on my mind is I really, really want to have these impactful global brands that are the leaders in their positions. Number one, unquestioned. I don't have to do it in a year or 10 years, but I do want the company to be able to be a leader in those positions at some point in the future. To do that, we have to be developing the best technology and the best design product, and be able to manufacture a quality product or the perfect product, and support all the supporting markets in that. So when I want to do that, selling to somebody else isn't a good solution. You lose too much control, and most of the investment companies and VC companies and stuff, they're looking at a shorter horizon,
like 5 years,
4 to 5 years. They're also chasing quarterlies and annual returns and things, and they want to maximize the amount of revenue they take out of the company. I would like to put as much money back in the company as possible, but get a superior return than if I took the money out anyway. Because at the end of the day, I think capital is trying to find some place to accomplish something with it. And as business owners or investors, your job is to put that capital to work where it gets the biggest return. So to scale that is super complicated. It's a lot easier to take excess capital and diversify it, manage portfolio, which is great. I need to do that personally. But in the business, it's a lot more difficult to scale and grow a business and still get a 3 or 4 times return than you would see in a public investment.
But that's the expectation.
That's what I have to do.
That's what you have to do.
So
that's
including after you make bad decisions and products don't work,
make mistakes, and
So that's the kind of goal we're doing and what we're facing. And we think for the company, increasing his scale and developing his team, I do think M&A is going to be a part of our toolkit to get that scale. So we'll probably be acquiring more and more companies as we build that system and process to handle that. So
that's very aspirational, very exciting.
But yeah, it's going to, it'd be, you never know. It'd be great to, leave, when I finally find a leadership team where I do need to step back, or I do something that, again, I think the founder has to think about what is where you create value and what you do with your time that creates the most value. If somebody else is focusing on things, doing the hard work, able to get the better result, you need to step back,
You need to let them do
and
it.
that's really hard for a lot of people.
It is.
So that's
I
going to be
just
part of it.
one of the things that you did just fearlessly is when you just say, "Hey, this is where I want to be. I want to be the leader in this market," because I know we do that here a little bit too, and there's risk there. I mean, you may not make it, and if you don't, you got to say, well, that's okay, but that's my goal, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
I love you guys have that same drive. You want to be the best at what you do.
Absolutely want to be the best.
We want to be the best we do, and we're not going to quit to get there.
Right.
But it just so happens that may happen 20, 30 years after I'm dead, or 100 years after I'm dead. I can't. I won't be around.
You
for
won't
a lot
be
of
here,
it.
but
if I can create the system and the process and the organization to achieve those great things, then that's the most I can hope for the company.
Yeah. So basically, your mentality and what I see is your ability to scale and continue to grow and create a company that is going to continue to succeed and succeed and succeed, even after you're no longer here. Is it's almost like your secret sauce. It's the way you've been able to continue with this trend of growth and and achievement and aspirations and so forth, um, which is really cool. And trying to be a product leader in such a competitive field is not going to be easy. You're right, and it is going to take like an incredible leadership team, and there's going to be all kinds of crazy twists along the way. But
it might not work. But it might work.
But it might work, and that's what you like, I think.
I will say though, you hit on something interesting. Like if you look at places to compete in, being in consumer branded products,
yeah,
it's the most like everyone's seeing everything that's so hyper focused, hyper competitive.
Yeah.
Oh man, it is. It'd be a lot better to be in a industry. Like if I was just trying to make money, it'd be better to be in an industry like selling toilet seats or like nuts and bolts or something, and then manage that really really well, because no one sees what you're doing. You can operate and be $1 billion company, never heard of you.
Yeah. No, that was our last host.
Nice.
Eric Wessinger, their company, sells just like toilet paper, stuff like that. And they they take the same concepts, of just being super efficient, very, client focused and so forth, and take it to the next level.
That's awesome. It's probably cool. It's potentially a lot more profitable because you don't have necessarily the hyper focused competition.
It's a good business. Yeah. But, at the same time, you've been able to grow in a high growth industry, and at least that's the way I perceive it.
Yeah, the challenge with the outdoor space, and again, I think our company needs to also look at things outside that, is our industry, the drivers of a number of participants and how frequently they participate and how much money they spend in it. We have a declining number of participants. They're getting older. They spend less.
They're all like my age or older.
The good thing is they're spending more money. That's the thing that's driving the business growth, is spending more money. And then within that space, we are the type of products that people are spending their discretionary income on more than they have in the past. Or they're shifting their spending towards stuff that we make.
Yeah,
so that's good. But it's not super easy.
No,
because with the overall market is probably flat or marginal growth.
Okay,
after inflation or something.
Cool.
So,
well, good.
Yeah. What's the next? Do you guys want to share what your thoughts are, as you're an entrepreneur as well? Can I hear your take on?
Okay.
I
knew you were going to do this. You're going to turn around and start asking me questions.
Because you're in the same different space, but you're going through a lot of the same things too. Like, how do you? What is your thinking on that? What would you do to keep doing the great things that you've done for us and others?
Yeah, I'd say that for us, as Schultz Wealth, we're a smaller boutique, wealth management firm, and when we talked about scale, that's something that when Austin and I talk, we're like, scale is going to be different for us. It's not going to be more clients. It's going to be, in some cases, probably fewer clients, but it's going to be highly super focused in on the founder owner that is, seeking a way to be able to, take care of their family and their legacy and so forth outside and away from their business.
Yeah.
And so that means the scale is different. It's not like we're going to have 100 employees in 10 years or whatever it may be. It's going to still stay as this really small, super focused team, highly specialized just within this market, which is a big shift because I thought that like a few years ago that we were going to kind of create what I call these diamond teams, and we were going to have these different advisor leads, and we'd have them like throughout the Metroplex and maybe even further and all that. And we shifted away from that.
Okay.
We decided specifically that we were going to stay this size with regard to the client number. It's just going to be a very, very different and very focused type of client.
Actually, that's very profound because I think one of the things that as a company we're grappling with is yes, we're this expanded operation, but that relationship with your customer has to be laser focused on their needs.
Yeah.
And if you can't manage that, I don't know how you manage what you do to every type of financial.
Well, that's what most financial advisors do.
But then you lose that focus on that owner entrepreneur, and then you're not really providing that understanding of their needs and how you can meet that. So I think sometimes focusing on, we believe that there's got to be a clear, unique benefit that you provide to a customer base, and you own that.
Yeah.
If it expands beyond that, you can do more, great. But what you're talking about is exactly the same type of thing that when we look at a market and what somebody, we look at and say, okay, this customer, we want to dominate that customer.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a broader customers there, and we can expand because products do good in different areas. But yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think it's really exciting because some ways you serve your customers better by focusing on less customers and keeping the customer laser focused on what you can do for them, build a business around that. I think it's great.
Yeah. And we feel like that we can hit the same, double digit type growth numbers with that as we could go into, for instance, that diamond team concept that I thought, and be more profitable at the same time. So that's kind of the direction that we've gone. But it's very different from, it's just, my business is very different than most of my clients' business, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you what's interesting with this podcast kind of explains too, you seek to understand the client's business.
Oh, yeah.
To understand their needs, anticipate how best to get to where they want to be, which is really cool. And I don't think, from my experience working with a lot of wealth advisors, they don't really understand that or provide those relationships. So that sets you apart already.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, excellent.
Yeah. Well, this has been good. James, thanks so much for coming on today. If somebody wants to get in contact with you and talk about some of the interesting aspects and knowledge that you have, what's a good way for them to contact you?
Probably reach out to my company.
Okay.
We have a website, there's phone numbers and contacts. So it depends on what they're trying to do. And, but yeah, seek us on the website, look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook. Look forward to engaging and sharing. And, we're all in this together. And the only way we get to be the best that we can be is by sharing and learning from one another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good. Well, everybody, I really appreciate you tuning in today. We try to put this out every other week. We're looking for great stories like James' story here. If you have a good story about your business or know somebody that would be really good for this podcast, that would want to share and explore some of these areas of challenges for founders and entrepreneurs, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I hope everybody has a great week. Take care.